Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, December 9th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We have a packed show today, starting where we often do, discussing the Chiefs with beat writer Pete Sweeney and columnist Sam McDowell. The Chiefs continued their losing ways, falling to the Houston Texans 20-10 on Sunday night. We'll talk about how it happened and what it means. After our first break, we explore the World Cup draw and the games coming to Kansas City in a segment sponsored by Arvest Bank. Argentina's first game as defending champion will be in Kansas City. Star reporter Pete Grathoff is here to break it all down. And it's been a wild ride recently for Kansas State football. In a matter of days, the Wildcats lost their successful head coach Chris Kleiman, hired a popular replacement in Colin Klein, and turned down a bowl invitation. Beat writer Kellis Robinett will help us sort it all out. Finally, I'll have some final thoughts and tell you what's on my radar this week. Let's get started talking Chiefs. Hello, Pete.
Hello, how's it going?
Sam, how you doing?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. Tell you what, I've been in some glum locker rooms in my time, but that was something else, what we saw after the Chiefs lost to Houston.
It honestly, I think, is the most depressing locker room I've ever walked into. And we've walked into Super Bowl losing locker rooms. We walked into playoff locker rooms in multiple sports, but it's a weird scenario because they still have like an 11% chance to make it. They haven't officially been eliminated. As Pete noted before we got on air, if the Chargers lose tonight, that'll increase. But it certainly felt like it was over when you walked in there. I mean, you walk in, it's hard not to just lock your eyes on Travis Kelce, who isn't talking, barely moving, still dressed in full uniform, even though we're not in the locker room until 15 minutes after it ended. And hands on his head, staring at the ground. And then, it was an image that really struck me that Patrick Mahomes had a towel over his head, which I'd never seen him before. It was very intentional about covering his face with it. And as I noted in my column, there's a guy who just thrives in the spotlight, seeks the spotlight, lives in the spotlight, and didn't want anyone to see him in that moment. And it was sort of, I thought, metaphorical for the way the Chiefs have disappeared this season.
I think I would compare it to a slow death rather than a sudden death. Like in the playoffs, you're just suddenly dead. And so there's some finality to it. It started, I think, with losing that Super Bowl. And I think everyone sort of felt, the Chiefs would rebound. And it just hasn't felt the same since that blowout that the Chiefs suffered. And I think part of it for Travis, who, as Sam mentioned, was just sitting there almost in disbelief, is that he could be saying to himself internally, I may never play in the playoffs again. I probably won't play in the playoffs again if this is going to be his last year. Chris Jones is another player. He has more days behind him than ahead of him. There's uncertainty about a lot of players that are going to become free agents, or you got to make big decisions on, like a Trent McDuffie. And so it really felt like this iteration of the Chiefs died in a way last night when they lost complete control as to whether or not they're going to make the playoffs. It does all change if the Eagles win tonight, because the other team you got to worry about is the Colts, and Daniel Jones is out for the season. They're now going to go with Riley Leonard at a Notre Dame, and so we'll see if they can lose 2 games. But the Chargers lose tonight against the Eagles. The Chiefs can deal them another loss the following week themselves. That's a lot to say, it seems like now. And then if the Chargers were to lose one more game and the Chiefs somehow continue to win, and the Colts thing goes your way, a lot of ifs here, right? But still, there is a weird path, but yet I think they were really saddened by the fact that they lost control.
I think it proved that they thought they were still in it.
Yeah.
Until yesterday, because that reaction was different than their other 6 losses, even though the loss came in very similar fashion.
Well, and this one came at home too, where even though they had lost to Philadelphia earlier in the year, week 2, you could tell they were still trying to figure some things out. I think they had gotten to the point where, they're going to find, sanctuary at home. They'll, whatever had ailed them in Dallas and Buffalo and Denver, it'll get fixed when they play in Kansas City. And for all intents and purposes, it looked like it was heading in that direction.
This is a very unique loss, and I think even more devastating because there were several players, and you include head coach Andy Reid in this, who could point to one moment in the game and say, I was the reason we lost tonight. I mean, we talked about off air, we could talk about it now, but all the drops, the unbelievable, puzzling fourth down call on your own 31 when the defense is playing well. Just not being able to hold the Texans to a field goal after that. I'm sure the defense to an extent can blame itself. So I think that was a big part of it as well.
If the game, I think, had a turning point, it was that 4th and 1 play. 4th and 1 from the Chiefs 31. What do the analytics say about going for it?
Yeah, they liked it. I mean, the models are going to like that decision. I mean, you're keeping the offense on the field in a situation where you're more likely to get it than not, as opposed to punting the ball to the other team and potentially relinquishing your chance at a last possession. Even you're not guaranteed even to get the ball back there, although you overwhelmingly likely are. But yeah, I think because of the math, you're probably going to have one fewer possession than the opposition when you punt. I mean, yeah, the models like it, and it's incredibly rare, as you guys know, that I will be on the other side of being more conservative than the models will suggest. That model doesn't take into account the game flow at all, which I mentioned even when I criticized Andy Reid to use the models in my favor. But in this situation, the game flow, as Pete mentioned, they had allowed 17 yards over the last 5 possessions of the game. And the last 8 possessions, the Texans hadn't gotten more than 19 yards on any of them. There was no reason to believe the Texans were going to score again in that game if you punt the ball back and they're starting inside their own 25 or inside their own 30. And instead, I mean, a team that couldn't drive the ball into your territory, you just said, well, here, come into our territory now, because here's a possession. And now they're in field goal range. I mean, I don't hate it as much as I think most people hate it, but I disagreed with it for that reason.
C.J. Stroud at that time had looked lost. Ever since those first 2 plays where Chris Jones got in his face to begin the half, he was out of sorts and he was sailing balls, and I just didn't think he was playing well. And I think that has to be part of it. And to Andy Reid's process, which Sam gets sometimes, he thinks about it. He thinks about game flow. And so kind of just threw it out the window in this scenario. And to me, I also think another aspect of it was the play call. You took Kareem out of the backfield. He was lined up he was on the line of scrimmage. There was no credible threat that you were going to run. And so the number 1 defense in the NFL now knows, we got to cover the pass catch.
It was an empty backfield.
Right.
Well, they ended up, they motioned Hollywood Brown to the backfield at the snap. But Hollywood Brown in 2 years with the Chiefs has never carried the football. The Texans don't deem that as the possibility. And you can see watching the All-22 today, what their vision for that play is most similar, I think, to the 4th down play they ran against the Cowboys where Jared Wiley is just open in the flat. I think that's what Hollywood Brown, they're intending the design of the plays can get him open in the flat. He's not. And I still think, well, one way to potentially get him open on that play is if Kareem Hunt's in the backfield. I understand not wanting to run Kareem Hunt every single down. He had already converted 3 short yardages in that game,
including the touchdown,
4th down touchdown, 2 third down, and 1 and 2. And so, you can't tell me the Texans didn't know Kareem Hunt was going to run the ball on 4th down. Telegraphing the Kareem Hunt play is not prevented it from working this year. But even if you're concerned about that, at least make him part of the calculus for the Texans. To completely zap him from the equation didn't make a lot of sense.
On the Wiley play, which Andy Reid compared it to and sort of said it was in the same schematic thought, they fake it to Kareem Hunt, which
exactly
if you get a defender to bite and then you're throwing, it suddenly changes, I think, the success rate on that play. And so it just, I mentioned to you, Blair, I imagine Andy Reid has to be sick about just A, the decision, and then B, the play call choice this morning, because I think we're going to go back to that for a long time to come. And it might have been the final nail in the coffin for, again, this era of Chiefs football.
Oh, that's a big statement. End of an era. Well, look, that was an incomplete pass on that 4th and 1 from Patrick Mahomes. That was 1 of 10 straight incomplete passes, 2 of which ended up with his interceptions. And Mahomes ended up with the worst passer rating, the worst completion percentage of his career in this game. But I got to tell you, you have to have a lot of help to have a bad game like that. And
yeah,
he definitely had help in having a terrible statistical game.
Totally agree. I mean, I did not leave that stadium thinking that Patrick Mahomes had a bad day. I didn't think he had a great day, but I didn't leave that stadium thinking, hey, Patrick Mahomes is the reason they lost. I mean, you walked into the stadium thinking he's going to need help today because you're playing without your left tackle, without your right tackle, without your right guard against a team that gets more pressure from the edge than any team in the NFL. So thought he's going to need help today. He's going to need help from the play caller. He's going to need help from the play designer, and he's going to need help from his receivers. And without a doubt, his receivers failed. I mean, I think, the NFL doesn't have an official drop stat. I think we came up with at least 7 passes, and just the significance of the drop passes. I mean, that the Travis Kelce interception basically ends the game. I mean, that's one of the 3 interceptions you mentioned, which of course dings the rating down under 20. Tyquan Thornton has totally a play on a ball in the end zone. Noah Gray drops 3rd down. Kareem Hunt drops 3rd down. Rashee Rice drops 4th down. Like, your quarterback is winning in those moments. And it was one thing after another, which has been very indicative of this team and in the fourth quarter in particular, to where, I mean, I hadn't used this word all year, but I don't know how you call anything else than they're choking in those big moments.
I think it also is worth noting this year that we've been to a lot of losses, and predominantly after every loss, the defensive stars are available, and that they will always talk to us and explain what went wrong, what has to go better. And we are used to now the offensive skill players, the important ones, just not available every loss. And I just think it's worth noting that a common thing that you see on like social media from Chiefs fans is someone needs to be accountable. Accountability. I mean, that you talk about media theory and whatever you want, but beginning with the top, the offensive skill players just are unwilling to talk after games. Last night, we saw multiple receivers leave before Travis Kelce had the entire media corps wait for him to say goodnight, guys. Have a good night. And it just rubs me, and I think would rub others the wrong way. And I just you'd hope that part gets better.
Yeah, we'll catch Travis Kelce's assessment of the game on New Heights this week. So stay tuned. Okay, great conversation as always, guys. We'll do it again soon. This is SportsBeat KC. Kansas City started down the path of becoming a World Cup city nearly a decade ago. Last weekend, the event began to feel real with the announcement of 4 group stage games coming to Arrowhead this summer. On this segment, presented by Arvest Bank, star reporter Pete Grathoff discusses what's in store for Kansas City in June and July. Hello, Pete.
Hey, Blair.
4 group stage games in June. There will be 7 nations from 4 continents here. Overall, how did Kansas City do in the draw?
I thought they did great. You get Argentina opening up its attempt at a second straight World Cup with Lionel Messi, the biggest draw you could probably have. Holland is going to travel very well. People are going to see a lot of orange in Kansas City when they're around. And Ecuador, when I was at the World Cup in 2006 in Germany, I just happened to come across Ecuador for a lot of them there. So I feel like they're going to travel well here as well. And so I think it's a great draw. I mean, the thing about the World Cup is the matches are important, but it's what's going to be like in Kansas City itself and how people here are going to interact with those fans from another country.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really looking forward to that aspect of the experience here. It's, when the Argentina fans, the Netherlands fans, the Ecuador fans are walking around downtown with their jerseys and going into restaurants and hotels and bars and everything, and just how they'll find Kansas City and how Kansas City will find them. So let me go down the schedule here. We mentioned the 4 games. Here they are. On June 16th, Argentina plays Algeria, the Desert Foxes from Algeria. And you mentioned it. This is Argentina's first game in defense of the 2022 World Cup Championships. That's a pretty good get.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're internationally known. They're going to try to become the 3rd nation ever to win back-to-back World Cups. This is going to be Messi's last World Cup ever.
Probably.
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 Good point. Yes. And there should be a lot of Argentinian fans here. There already are a lot of fans around town, and there are a lot of Messi fans around town. So
And we saw what happened the last time he came to Kansas City with Inter Miami. What was it, 72,000 at Arrowhead for an MLS game against Sporting Kansas City?
Absolutely. And with Kansas City being the only Midwest city to have World Cup games, boy, we're going to draw from a really large swath of the country to come to games here, especially see Argentina.
And then on June 20th, Ecuador plays Curacao, the smallest nation to ever qualify for the World Cup. And of course, it's happening in part because it's the largest World Cup, right? 48 teams are in it. It was 32 just 4 years ago, but Curacao is a curiosity.
Absolutely. And you're right about the expanding the World Cup. Everybody talked about coming into this draw, which would be the group of death. Well, when you're adding that many more teams, there really isn't a group of death anymore. They're solid groups, and this is one of them, I think. They may get overlooked. But yeah, Curacao is going to be a curiosity, as you said. And if anybody's listening in Curacao, find us, because it's going to be interesting to see who's here from that to watch them play.
Yeah, it's a nation of 65,000 people, something like that. So smallest not only in population but just size of the country as well. They'll be fun. That'll be a fun team coming to Kansas City for a group stage game. On June 25th, the Netherlands, the Dutch against Tunisia. You mentioned it. The Dutch Orange Army will be in town. And I've only seen it on television. Did you ever experience seeing their march to the stadium?
I haven't seen it in person, no. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a fun thing that we'll get here in Kansas City. And I think that's the third game of the group stage, right?
Yes, on the 25th of June.
So one thing that's different this year is in the past, you've kind of had teams that were eliminated going into the last round. You only need 3 points to advance, probably. It's going to come down to goal differential, stuff like that. And I'm not saying Tunisia is going to be they've been to the World Cup before. But those games now carry a little more meaning and could, not only are you trying to win your group, but you've got a chance to stay alive when in the past you hadn't. So that should be a great game. And yeah, there will be a lot of orange in the stands and around town.
That's a good point that I really hadn't thought of, because with 48 team field, 32 advanced to the round of 32, obviously. And that means 8 third place teams in the groups are going to advance. Which also means if you're 0-2 in group play, you're not out of it.
That's right.
You know, if you lose your first 2 games, you're playing your third game in the group stage with a chance to advance, and that should make those games more competitive. And then the fourth game coming to Kansas City in the group stage part of this on June 27th, Algeria versus Austria. Austria used to be a world power. They've had some top 4 finishes in the World Cup, but I don't think one since the 1950s.
It's been quite a while. And if you are a soccer history buff going back to 1982, Austria and Algeria were in the same group with West Germany at the time.
Oh, yes. This is a good story. We're going to have to get into this in a bigger way, but please tell us.
Yeah, it's Algeria beat West Germany in the first game, a huge upset. And going into the last game, Austria and West Germany knew if they tied, they would both advance. And Algeria needed one of them to win, and it turned into the worst match, maybe. They call it the worst match in World Cup history because Austria and West Germany didn't care. They just played for a 0-0 tie, and that's what ended up happening. Algeria got eliminated. So
scandal is what it.
Scandal. Well, it changed the way that the World Cup is held now. That third match day, teams play at the same time to avoid just such a thing happening.
Right. So a little grudge match here, perhaps, with Algeria and Austria. Exactly. We'll get into that in a later podcast. But so those are the 4 group stage games. There are 2 more games coming to Kansas City. We don't know the identity of those teams, but they're, of course, elimination games. One is in the round of 32, and the other is a quarterfinal. The round of 32 game on July 3rd. July 11th is the quarterfinal. What are some of the more intriguing possibilities for those games? Let's start with the round of 32.
Well, the group stage winner, that's Portugal's group, I think.
Yes, yeah. Group K.
So we can have Ronaldo here, too, in Kansas City. Ronaldo and Messi playing within a month in Kansas City. I mean, that's that's the biggest debate in soccer, I would say. Who's better, and they're among the all-time greats with Maradona and Pele, and so that I think that would be a phenomenal if we got Portugal here. And again, I think there would be a lot of fans here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it would be fun.
Wow. Think about that. Messi and Ronaldo here is a possibility. It's also possible the U.S. could find its way here in one of these elimination games. So it will just have to see how the tournament unfolds, the group stage games. Now, we mentioned it earlier, and you mentioned it. You went to the 2006 World Cup in Germany. How many games did you go to?
I covered the U.S. through the group stage, and then I went to a bunch of the knockout games, including the 2 semifinals and finals. I would have to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10.
Well,
yeah.
So you really did get to fully immerse yourself in the experience of a World Cup.
Absolutely. And, you stay in those cities between days, too. So you see the fans that are there, as the Kansas City's talked about. Fans will come for like 8, 9 days. So you will come across the fans, and everybody, and this is the thing, everybody's in a good mood. It's an exciting time. They're glad to be there. This is a vacation for those fans. So, they'll be very excited. A quick story in Hamburg. I was walking one day before the first match, and that night, I think it was Argentina, and it was going to play Côte d'Ivory, Ivory Coast. And there were some Argentina fans I was talking to, and these Ivory Coast fans were walking towards it like a group. It was 2 groups, and I thought, ooh, this could get ugly. But they just started singing and dancing together. It was just, everybody's in a good mood, and that's what Kansas City's going to see. It's just a great love for the game, and so it should be fun.
I liken it a little bit to what college football fans experience when they go to bowl games. It's you especially from this part of the country, from the cold Midwest, and in December and January, and your fan base packs up and goes to Florida or California or Texas or New Orleans or someplace warm for a week, and everybody's in a festive mood. So, well, Pete, look forward to talking to you more about the World Cup as the weeks roll on. Thank you very much, and we'll do it again soon. Welcome back to SportsBeat KC. In a matter of days, Kansas State football coach Chris Klieman resigned. The school hired former quarterback Colin Klein as its new head coach, and then it announced it would not accept an invitation for a bowl game. Kellis Robinett covers K-State for the Star and Wichita Eagle. Kellis, it's another day, so any big news dropping in Manhattan today?
Nothing major as of yet, but like you said, it's only 2 o'clock as we record this, so in an hour maybe something else is coming down the pike.
Yeah, busy time. Let's start with Chris Kleiman's resignation. I got to tell you, 7 years ago, he was hired to replace the legendary Bill Snyder, and I think he did about as well as could be expected in his 7 years. I got 54-34 overall record. 36-27 in Big 12 games, the 2022 Big 12 championships, top 25 in every season, 58 years old. It doesn't sound like the profile of a coach who's no longer interested in coaching, but apparently he's not interested in coaching at Kansas State anymore. What's your take?
Well, first off, I agree with everything you said. To follow a coach like Bill Snyder, there's obviously doubts in Manhattan. If another coach could come in and lead Kansas State to a Big 12 championship, nobody else had ever done it. The only other time they tried to follow Bill Snyder was an incredibly up and down ride over 3 years with Ron Prince. Had a few big wins over Texas, won bowl, but just a lot of losses that left Kansas State fans just really frustrated. It wasn't that way during the Chris Kleiman era. He got them bowl eligible in 6 seasons, like you said. They were ranked at some point in all 7 seasons while he was here. The 2022 season was a dream to win the Big 12, and I'll just remember his tenure more than anything for some of the guys he recruited, like Deuce Vaughn, Cooper Beebe, Felix Uzama, Ben Sinnott, Will Howard. These are some of the best players that Kansas State has had, since the first Bill Snyder era, when they were just churning out great recruits. And that's not to say anything bad about Kansas State's new head coach Colin Klein, but so there was a new generation of players coming in here who did a lot of great things. So I'll remember his time at Kansas State for that. I was surprised that he decided to call it quits now, but I will say this season was very trying on him. After they got off to a 2-4 start, just everything he seemed to say didn't really resonate with the fan base anymore. And I first kind of started to think when he had the breakdown after the Utah game in the press conference, and he was just so emotional about it. At that moment, I had heard people say, "Hey, he might think about retiring at some point soon," and I blocked it out. I said, "No, no, he's still got a lot of good years left in him." But when that happened, I started to think, you know what, maybe this is his time, and that proved to be correct.
Yeah, yeah, and that was an emotional moment in Utah after the game. Athletic director Gene Taylor had to come to the podium and console him, and at his resignation press conference last week, Chris Kleiman didn't take any questions. He basically read a statement and spoke from the heart. But then it was Gene Taylor, the AD, who followed him, did take some questions, and suggested pretty strongly that um, that college sports is a little bit out of control with not being able to contain the NIL, with the transfer portal, just some of the modern things that are going on with college sports. And maybe Chris Kleiman wasn't entirely comfortable in that world. Look, with all the success he's had, he has met the challenges for the most part. Yeah, this year a little bit underachieving, but still became bowl eligible with their sixth win in the regular season finale against Colorado. So, do you see Chris Kleiman coaching again anywhere?
I don't, not as a head coach anyway. He did tell a Fargo radio station this weekend that he's going to take 6 months off, have some time, maybe in Florida with his wife, and think things over. Crack the door open for possibly a return. I think if he did come back, he would be as like an analyst, some kind of advisory role where he's on staff, but he's not talking to the media all the time. He's not the one making the big decisions. If he did, who knows if something happened at North Dakota State and they had a head coaching opening, maybe he'd want to go back there where NIL isn't such a big issue. But I think it would be something like that. I don't think he's going to resurface in the Big 12 or at a power conference level or anything like that. I think he was up for a lot of these challenges when he hired a new GM over the last 2 years and gave a lot of the money responsibilities to him. I could tell some burden was taken off his back. I think that helped him a lot. But I do think that this season he just kind of got worn down by not only fan criticism and losses, but I think every week when he had players, doing good or maybe somebody used back channels to tell them that they might have some opportunity somewhere else, they were always asking for more money. And it's just a never ending thing that, I think is stressful for him. He would much rather just coach football and build relationships with players and develop 3-star recruits and win, than constantly worrying about who's going to get $2 million, who's going to get $1 million, who's going to come in and play for free. I do think that wore on him. And that to me is why I don't think you'll ever see him in a real prominent role again, but I wouldn't rule out something like an advisory role or a lower FCS job. He really did seem to love his time at North Dakota State. So I would say if something like that creep back open, maybe Northern Iowa where he once played, it's possible at a lower level he could maybe resurface as well.
Welcome to big time college sports in 25, 26. So the replacement, of course, Colin Klein, that Heisman Trophy finalist quarterback at K-State, member of the staff for the Wildcats, first under Bill Snyder and then under Chris Kleiman last 2 years, and still the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M, which is in the college football playoffs. Wildly popular choice, correct?
It was the only choice.
That's the only choice.
Gene Taylor cracked the joke that he would not be able to continue on as athletic director had he hired anyone else, and he is probably right about that. Short of like bringing in Nick Saban or something, I don't know that Kansas State fans would accepted anybody other than Colin Klein, and that's what made this so easy. As soon as word got out that Chris Kleiman was considering retirement, they knew exactly who they had to call and say, "Hey, don't take any other jobs. This is probably going to happen. And you're going to be the pick." So, open and shut case on that one. Everybody, and hey, I mean, it should be. It's he's never been a head coach before. There's no way to know for sure how well or bad it's going to work out, but he's already galvanized the fan base. It's rare for a fan base to, get exactly what they want in a coaching search, but they're getting it here. So we'll see how it goes.
36 years old. He'll be one of the youngest, if not the youngest, in Power 5, Power 4 football next year. We'll see. So
That's the first time I've been older than the head coach.
oh wow, threshold has been crossed. So, all right. Well, we got to wrap it up with this, Kellis. No bowl game for the Wildcats. I mentioned earlier they're bowl eligible, but decided not to go to a bowl. Tell us what's behind that call.
Yeah, it's an interesting ordeal. I don't like it, but I understand it. That's how I would describe it. And I mean, people care about it. It's interesting for as much, as obviously the bigger news you would think would be Chris Kleiman and Colin Klein. But the number one most read story I wrote last week was about how Kansas State might decline a bowl game, believe it or not, more than a coach retiring and a coach getting hired. So there is a lot of interest in this. I think the main thing here is the dream scenario would have been Chris Kleiman says, I'm coming back to coach one more game. This is going to be my last hurrah. All the players say, yeah, let's go win it for Chris. Let's send him out with a Gatorade bath and I'll have fun with it. But when he retired, he was very much of the mindset that I'm retiring right this second, and I'm not coming back to coach in the Independence Bowl or the Rate Bowl or the Liberty Bowl. And Gene Taylor, from what he said to us, was he tried to talk him out of it, texted him, hey, would you like to come back and coach? And the decision was no. I'm at peace. I'm retired. I want time off. And when the head coach doesn't want to come back and coach, it's hard to get anybody else to sign up for the interim gig. It would have been cool to see Joe Klanderman try it, Matt Wells try it. Kansas State played LSU a few years ago in a bowl game where they sent 40 players and the offensive line coached the game. It didn't go well for him, but it was still kind of fun to watch. I would have been fine seeing that with lower expectations, but that's not a route they wanted to take. It was a lot of dialogue back and forth. They talked to players, talked to coaches, talked to the Big 12. And clearly the Big 12 did not want them to do this because they fined them $500,000 for not playing. I think Iowa State getting in the exact same situation with Matt Campbell going to Penn State, I think that complicated matters even further. I think Kansas State and Iowa State talked about it and said, well, whatever you do, we're going to do the same thing. It'd just be awkward if one of them was playing and one of them wasn't. So as soon as one of them said, you know what, it's not in our best interest to play, the other said, we'll do it too. And no bowl game this year. It is a little disappointing. You always want to see an extra game, even if it is just for developmental purposes or whatever. But I do understand if players are, mad about it, if coaches don't want to do it, it's hard to put a team out there. And that's just where they were. It was a situation where could they have done it? Yes. Did they want to? No. So this is where we are.
And as you mentioned, it's going to cost Kansas State $500,000. I suspect that'll be money withheld from Kansas State when they distribute funds at the end of the academic year, the media money. But $500,000, that's the price of a running back these days. That's some NIL, and that'll hurt him a little bit in the pocketbook. Okay, Kellis, great conversation. Thanks. We'll do it again soon.
All right, anytime, Blair.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. KU emerged victorious in the border war battle against Missouri at T-Mobile Center on Sunday, and the big story was the return of freshman star Darren Peterson. He hadn't played in a month with a hamstring injury, but looked solid with 17 points in his return against the Tigers. With Peterson, KU is a top 15 team. Baseball's winter meetings convene in Orlando this week, and the Royals are looking to deal. They have starting pitching depth, and they need a corner outfielder that can hit. Don't be shocked if someone like Chris Bubich or Noah Cameron gets moved, and if the Red Sox outfielder Jarren Duran or Cardinals infielder Brendan Donovan gets flipped to the Royals. That'll do it for this week. Thanks to our production staff of Gabriella Lacey, Suzanne Hogan, Irvin Zhang, and Monty Davis, and to our editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.